you don't actually fully know your partner ever. Any relationship that requires you to be less than who you fully are is not the relationship for you.
Why do we have so many problems with connection in the modern world? We like people who share our vulnerabilities. When we try to be perfect, it makes us very lonely.
Don't waste a good divorce. Don't waste a good breakup. Use the grief, use the anger, use the betrayal. Do everything you can to get so aligned with who you are. Don't leave any of your potential on the table. That's just a waste of your life and a waste of your time.
Hi, this is Marisa. I'm excited to introduce you to Mark Groves, who is known as the Human Connection Specialist. And Mark's work bridges the academic and the human. His passion, his interest is all about love. And he talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly of love and the beautiful side of connection. I always tell everyone, we're born, we are super coded to find connection, avoid rejection. So Mark, welcome. I'm excited you're here and I can't wait to pick your brains on the good, the bad, and the ugly of connection. I'd love your take on when people say, isn't it hard work being married? It's so hard. How do you respond to that? That idea that it's all hard work.
Yeah, I think even the misconception that it's hard, I think it probably comes from the experience of being with people that are hard to be with, or the experience of childhood where relationships are hard, but I agree with you. Humans are better together. We need each other. We need to be able to depend on one another. There's no human that's more powerful on their own. And I don't mean that from like a hierarchical sense of power, but just through the reflections that your partner provides you of the blind spots that you don't see on your own. It's through relationship that you see the limitations you have.
Yeah, for me, I know whenever I've been on a trip, it's just so nice to come home to someone who loves you, being collected at the airport, coming home and having someone waiting for you. I know a lot of people say, well, I have my cat or my dog or my pet. But I think having someone to wake up to, someone to come home to, someone who's got your back and is rooting for you is like the best thing in the whole world.
Yeah, someone who can love you into your fullest potential. Like if our relationships, instead of being the place that we go to turn down our voice, turn down our capacity, become less of who we are. So many of us, when we enter a relationship or just the way we operate in them, is we play small. We get smaller for the relationship. And any relationship that requires you to be less than who you fully are is not the relationship for you.
Tell me about your journey from being a single man to now being a married man with a 13-month-old son. How has that been for you? What have you had to adapt to? What's been the easiest bit and what's been the not easiest bit? We're not going to ever use the word hard.
When I first started teaching relationships, I was in my early 30s and I was single at the time. And I remember people would say to me, well, why would we listen to you about relationships since you're single? And I said, well, that operates under the misconception that being in a relationship means you're good at them. But the experience of being single and studying relationship and really studying my own patterns, all of those things was absolutely necessary. And I think it gave me a large window into so many people's experiences. And it was when I went through a heartbreak in my late 20s that I started to study relationships on a romantic level. I wanted to understand, why when I made a choice to end something, and I felt more connected to myself than ever, did I feel disconnected or judged by the people in society, by people in my community, that my relationship had quote unquote ended. I was told that I was afraid of commitment. My journey through relating from that sense and then entering a partnership with my now wife, we've been together for almost 9 years. We actually were together for 4 years and then broke up for a year and then came back together. And when you go from being single to being in a relationship, now your life is not just oriented around yourself. So there is a death that happens, the death of the life just being about you. And then the transition from couple to family is another transition. You're no longer just the two of you. Our relationship of having a son now, being able to witness his view of the world, to see the world through his eyes. What I love about witnessing him is he has no judgments. He has no preconceived notions. And also, I will add that the extra tiredness had me recognize like, man, I was a really good communicator before we had a kid. And then I was like, I still have some work to do in the communication department.
One of the great things about watching children is you realize that all of the fears we have, we must have got no babies as I'm terrified of flying, I'm scared of elevators, I don't like enclosed spaces. After all, they spend 9 months in a very enclosed space. They're not scared of being looked at. They don't have any fears. They only have 2 fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of being dropped. And then you think, gosh, so all the fears that we'll go to a therapist with were acquired. Babies don't say, oh, don't look at me, I haven't got any hair. Just they are kind of fearless. But when people say, I've got this genetic shyness, or I've got this gene, or I was born like this, we're not even born biting our nails because we don't have any teeth. So I always find it very interesting that when you have a child or you're around children, you realize that almost all the fears we have as adults we're not born with, we acquired. Do you notice that now, being a father, that your child is pretty fearless, really?
Oh my gosh, yes. And he walks up to literally everybody, especially if they're on a phone, and he says hi to everybody. He just walks up and he goes, hi. And if they're on a device, that actually, I can see him really wanting them to disengage from the device and look at him.
Here's a great question for you, because you've just led me straight into it. Why do we have so many problems with connection in the modern world? We're in a modern world with all these devices. Why do we now have so many problems connecting, not just to our ideally, I never hate that word other half, because it says, well, you're half, and when you find your other half, you behold, and no one's a half. The person we want, the one, let's call it the one. Why do we have so many problems connecting in the modern world with the one, but also with friends and all kinds of people? Why do you think this connection has become a modern issue for so many people?
Well, I think for a lot of us, I think of my age and up, we are the last generation to know life pre-smartphone. So we're the last ones to really have an understanding of what was possible as children, what was, you'd go on your bikes and go on adventures. The type of world seems to have gone. And I'm not saying there obviously isn't a benefit to being able to check in and have communication, but there's also something about adventure where you're not being tethered constantly to supervision. There are parents now who have apps that can track their teenage kids and everything they're doing. To me, there's not an element of trust that exists in that. It actually eradicates that. And if people don't develop self-trust, they don't develop a self, they don't develop discernment, and I think a lot of the reasons we have a lot of challenges communication-wise is because we're so flooded with a volume of connections that are superficial, that it actually takes up the space for any depth. I'd also say that because of platforms like social media, there's twofold. One, there are literally thousands of behavioral scientists whose whole job is to keep you on your phone and to keep you on those devices. Then you also have short form content, which has just continued to reduce our attention spans. In the research, when 2 people have their phones on them and they're on a date and they're in their pocket or even just on the table face down, it actually reduces the amount of vulnerability experienced in the conversation. They are less vulnerable because they're constantly being pulled at the possibility of their device, that there's something else going on outside of the present moment.
And also, what I see social media do is every time you go on, you are overexposed to fake images of perfection. Everyone else got a better body, a better home, a better kid, a better relationship. And you look at that and it makes you feel inadequate. I think social media does a big job of making you feel bad. There are sites where you're nice to rate you. Hey, rate me. And they go, well, you're a 2 or a 3 or maybe a 4. We already have a big enough problem thinking we're not good enough, worthy enough, lovable enough anyway. But I think social media has made that dramatically worse. And everyone looks like they're having a better life than you. It's very sad.
Yeah, you really need to be able to engage in some serious discipline about what we're exposing and choosing to direct our attention towards. I would argue that the currency of the future is actually being able to manage your own attention, because the currency of today is your attention. It is, they really, and when I say they, I mean social media companies, and which would ultimately mean shareholders, is that they would take every second of your life if they can.
And we talked last time, we were talking about your little baby, because he wasn't even one then, was already getting addicted to the phone, that the colors were so addictive to him, and that you took that very important step of saying he will not be on the phone. Because I see people, I saw some friends recently who came over, they had 2 small children, and they were like that, on the phone, just on the phone. A couple of days later, I was having lunch, and there was a guy next to me with 2 little girls drawing, and I said, "Oh, I'm so impressed you don't have a phone." He said, "I don't allow it." And I watched these girls go, "Daddy, Daddy, look at my drawing, look at the color, look at the picture." And it was so nice they were interacting, whereas the kids on the phone were just lost. So tell me about how you made that decision to not allow your baby to be on the screen, to not use it to educate him or babysit him.
I mean, before we ever had him, my wife and I had an agreement that our children will not have technology until, we haven't decided that age, but it's going to be well past being 3, 4, 5. And it's because, if he catches a glimpse of a picture or something like that, he can't handle the level of vibrancy of it. It's so stimulating for him, as you were mentioning. And so we made that decision very early on. I remember being at a restaurant in New York and sitting at a table having breakfast with a friend, and a family was sitting beside me, and they had a 9-month-old who was on their phone. And I'm like, this is, again, I was mentioning earlier that this is how children actually learn communication and empathy, is by being with people. I have a friend whose 4-year-old sits down at a table and gets out drawings and engages with you, gets into storytelling. Like, kids could play for hours with twigs and rocks and in the grass, right? Like, that's the miracle of the world. That's the mystery. That's the iPad. And I'm not saying that there aren't times, of course, and circumstances in people's lives where they need something like that, but we did it before technology. So it's like, how do we do that again? I think we're not recognizing how this is impacting their brains, how it's impacting their connections. And I'd say a lot of it is because the parents have not done the work. They haven't done the work to explore their own addictions to technology and their own inability to sit with boredom. For my wife and I, we really wanted our son and any children we have after this to really just be with the world, to experience the magic that this is. It's so magical. And at the end of the day, no phone, no technology, no cartoon will ever replace the value of sitting with a family and having dinner and just sharing that level of connection that the body knows the difference. And that's why we crave true connection so deeply. And don't we want to model for our children that ability to be with each other and actually sit with one another and be curious and open and really share love?
Yeah, and be connected, like you say. I mean, I say to all my clients, look, your feelings are the most real thing you will ever have. And you got to feel your feelings until they no longer require to be felt. And when you drink your feelings, eat your feelings, shop your feelings, they go on the screen to not feel your feelings. They don't really go away. They just regroup and come back. But here's a question. What is the one belief that you think would benefit everyone who has a loving connection? What's the one belief that would benefit their life?
Well, I'd say one is that you don't actually fully know your partner ever. So your partner is always a mystery, and you're always a mystery. And I think when we operate from, we always have more to learn about ourselves, more possibility and potential to tap into, we get to see our partner through the same lens. A lot of the times we're afraid of our partners growing because we're afraid they're going to grow away from us. And so just operating from that belief, if you're already in a partnership, operating from that belief, like, there is always more to learn, that my partner is always changing, that I'm always falling in love with some more of somebody. We assume we already know everything about them. And because of that, we stop getting curious and we stop asking questions. And that really removes the mystery that is in a person that we're choosing. And because we think the familiarity, and then if there's familiarity and there's no mystery, then we're like, well, this isn't that interesting anymore.
What is a habit you think we could all embrace or learn that would benefit our loving connections?
I think for our loving connections is to recognize where our attention is. Maybe we're leaving the present moment to not be present with people. The ability to be with our own selves is really the gateway to be with other people. And so the habit a really helpful habit that we could do that maybe is a daily practice is actually just in the morning to prepare ourselves for connection. I think one thing that we don't realize is that, and it's a truth anyways, but it's a hard truth to be with, is that your partner can leave you in any moment. And I don't say that to cause fear or anything for anyone, but rather
So
to
you could
say
leave
it's
them too.
exactly. So if they could leave you and you could leave them, then that means they're choosing to be with you. We often think that commitment means that they can never go anywhere. And so then we stop trying. And so I think when we can recognize that to be in one another's company and to share moments is a choice, and they could be anywhere in the world in any other moment, and to be with you is such a gift, and you to be with them is such a gift. So I think the habit of really practicing that intentional presence to just put a little more deposits into our relationships in our lives.
What helps me and what helps all my clients is to understand that you're never going to find a perfect person. They don't exist. I'm flawed. My husband is flawed. And we have a beautiful relationship, which is flawed. I call it being flawsome. I'm a flawed parent. I have a flawed child. And we have a beautiful, flawed relationship. But without skipping a beat, that all of the unhappiest clients I've ever come across in my life are the ones who try to be perfect. Not only are they the unhappiest, they're also the loneliest. We like people who share our vulnerabilities. When we try to be perfect, it makes us very lonely. And I think if we could all say, look, I'm flawed, you're flawed, let's have a great flawed relationship together. So here's my final question for you. What advice would you give to someone who says, I want this beautiful connection, this beautiful relationship where I'm loved and I love the other person. We love it. We believe in each other. We're growing a lovely relationship every day. That's what I want, but how? What would you say to them? What advice could you give someone who wants a relationship but is really a little confused about how or where to find it or what they should do to get it?
Well, I'd say the first thing is come fully alive. Like for me, when someone has gone through a breakup, I'm like, all right, this is the fuel. Like step into your fullest possibility and potential. Use the grief, use the anger, use the betrayal, use the opportunity. Don't waste a good divorce. Don't waste a good breakup. And if you're single and maybe you're not processing a breakup, but maybe you're frustrated about dating and relating, it's like, do everything you can to get so aligned with who you are, because most of us are leaving stuff on the table. We're like, oh, I know I could be doing this. I should be doing this, which of course creates shame and then creates us. We start to carry our shoulders a little down. It's like actually get so aligned with yourself, because what happens inevitably when you do that is you walk through the world differently. You have a swagger to you, get access to boundaries, because what do people love most? They love people who know themselves and honor themselves. That's some of the hottest stuff in the world. The hottest in the world is someone who has access to their no. The reason access to a no is so attractive is because it means that a yes is authentic. So when someone says to me, like, how will I know when my person shows up? I'm like, well, you got to get good at saying no to who's not your person, because when your person shows up, you won't know how to say yes to that person yet, because you yet haven't learned how to access no. And so for people to really step into that, that's one. It's like, don't leave any of your potential on the table. That's just a waste of your life and a waste of your time. Secondly, is go to what feels great for you. So if someone says, oh, you got to get on a dating app, or you got to do whatever you want. Because what I know to be true is when you're making a decision on a Wednesday night that is not aligned, you're giving up the opportunity to be somewhere else if you were aligned. We all know that if you were to make one choice that's different, you end up in a different place. Well, let's say that Wednesday night's your booty call night with your situationship, which is not aligned for you, and you can feel yourself compromising what you truly desire. You say, I want this loving, amazing relationship, yet you find yourself in relational circumstances that don't match that. So you're sending a confusing message to yourself, whether you deserve that, whether you can get that. You don't trust. So if you all of a sudden say, you know what, I'm going to trust, I'm going to get fully in alignment. I watched this event. Now I feel good. I'm going to do that. Wednesday night, you find yourself in a different place, and that's all it takes. That's the moment where you meet the person because you actually showed up for yourself, and then they showed up alongside you showing up for yourself. So by following that, like that level of alignment, trusting what feels light, easy, I also think a beautiful thing to do every day in the morning and before you go to sleep is to just say, I believe in miracles. I believe in miracles. That's just how my life works. It shows up for me.
I see a lot of people saying, I'm looking for love. I'm looking, where are you looking, darling? They go, well, I go to yoga. I go, how many men are in the yoga class? 3. How many women? 38. Okay, well, where else are you looking for love? Well, I go out with my girlfriends to a book club, and we go shopping together, and we go to a bar together. I'm like, you know, if you were looking for a job, you would go, I'm looking for a job, but I'm not really looking for a job. You'd go exactly where the job you wanted was. So if you're really looking for love and you're a woman and looking for a heterosexual guy, you have to go where they are. You have to forget about yoga and go to the weights room. You have to play poker or golf or really be more objective. Same thing with men who say, I'm looking for love. I go to the pub or the bar with all my friends. You have to, maybe you should get out of the weights room and go to the yoga class. But I found a lot of people are not objective. They, you know, if I was looking for a house, I'd be getting magazines, I'd be going to see realtors, I'd be looking for the houses till I found the one I wanted. If I was looking for a job, I'd be really busy looking for a job. I wouldn't be going where the jobs are not to look for a job or where the homes are not to look for a home. So I think, just as my belief, if you really work on believing you're deeply, deeply lovable, then go to where the person, the kind of person you want, may be, you'll end up with them. It isn't like I'm going searching. It's like, okay, I love running. I'm joining a running club. I love animals. I'm going to walk dogs for a dog shelter. If you know you're lovable and do something that sparks you, you'll find someone. I knew someone who was heartbroken by her marriage ending, and she went to a place where she was rescuing animals. And of course, she met someone there, and they're wildly in love and so happy. But she wasn't actually looking for someone to mend her broken heart. She wasn't looking for another person. She just went to this refuge to give something of herself. And in that is a great lesson. If you believe you're lovable and follow your heart's desire and put yourself around people that are like-minded, you'll definitely end up with one. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been an amazing, amazing talk. I think you've given us so many wonderful hints, and I love your story about your love story with your wife and your beautiful son. Thank you so much. It's been amazing. Time has flown. Thank you, and I wish everyone in the world could find the kind of love that you have, the kind I have. And of course you can, if you just can know you're worth it. Check out my next video here.